Our next speaker is actually substituting for Miles Fish, who's been a speaker here on several occasions. Miles is president and CEO of International Aid in Spring Lake, Michigan, right in our backyard, but family health issues called him away today. In his absence, Robert Goodwin, Bob, is going to speak on behalf of Miles. He's the Chief Operating Officer of International Aid, healthcare relief and developmental organization located, as I say, in Spring Lake. As Chief Operating Officer, he's responsible for accomplishing their mission, which is in 3 parts: addressing the ongoing needs of 1.1 million people globally who lack access to safe drinking water, providing critical medical equipment, supplies, and training to support hospitals and clinics around the world, and developing a technical infrastructure that will link donor-based resources with recipient partner needs. But maybe best known as their role as a first responder to 9/11, the wars of Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq, the 4 hurricanes of 2004 plus Katrina. My understanding they were on the site in 30 hours after Katrina hit, and the massive tsunami in South Asia. Bob grew up in Fort Myers, Florida, entered the Air Force after attending the Air Force Academy, graduated from there in 1994, spent about 5 years in the military in escalating roles, primarily in the defense, Secretary of Defense area. There he went into private industry, but after leaving there, he went on to become his current position at International Aid. Just before coming to International Aid, he was Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Force Management Integration. Please welcome Bob Goodwin.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've pretty much thrown out my notes after hearing some of the speakers today because I just went through and I said, okay, Peter Swan and Ron Denham gave us the global picture of what's going on. Oil, water is to be the oil of the future. Wars will be fought over it. It's a scarce resource. We have to do what we can about conservation now. Rob Quick talked to us about the harm of unsafe water and the economic burden that's placed on us because of it. Mark Sobsey talked about household water treatments and what effectiveness some of those point-of-use technologies have had. And then Bonnie just talked to us about what WHO is doing in regards to setting up this global network. So what does that mean for you sitting in this room is pretty much what I'm going to talk about, because there are things that you can do right now. If you just think about the people that I just mentioned that are here, as well as we've got people from multiple NGOs. Living Water, I know, is here. Heart to Heart is here. I represent International Aid. I'm sure there's others that are here. All the Rotarians that are doing phenomenal projects, some of them in partnership with us, some of them in partnership with those other organizations I mentioned. There are business leaders here. Someone from Dow is here. And we've got people from Tony, who represents Rotary from Central America. My field director from Honduras is here, Roni Meza, and I'd encourage you to meet with him. But the unique thing is why International Aid got into the water business is a unique thing happened where Dr. David Manns, who invented the concrete version of the biosand filter, said, all right, well, I'm giving away that license to make it out of concrete. I'm gonna give you, International Aid, the exclusive license to make it out of plastic. And really, he did that partially because of some relationships were established, but really it was about our network. Our relationships with people on the ground, our relationships with corporations, our relationships with other NGOs. Because for 27 years, International Aid has been really unknown to many people because we have been an enabler of other organizations. We've been providing medical equipment, supplies, training, and doing it without really taking a whole lot of credit for those activities, because our mission was, let's create something that gets a result on the ground, not so much worry about our own personal interests. And that's really how we're approaching this water challenge. There is so much work to be done, and there are so many areas that need to be looked at. And the challenge for us is, how do we get people engaged now to meet their vested interests and to partner in unique ways so that we can achieve better results. And you've seen this from the WHO charts. It's academia, it's businesses, it's citizens, it's associations, it's NGOs, it's governments. And if you look at an example, I'll just give you, we found some unique abilities to do partnerships with a project we had in Ghana, which was a surgical skills training center. And it was providing high-end medical surgical training for doctors, and in laparoscopic surgery, trauma surgery. And what was interesting is we just were going about our business setting up this training center, but we were training those physicians on medical equipment of Siemens, Storz, Johnson & Johnson. And so what we found over time, as well, we were also teaching the host nation professionals how to maintain that medical equipment. So what we found is we were raising the capability of the physicians, we were raising the capability of the technicians, and essentially we were building a market for those companies who wanted to break into those industries. And now it's become this amazing project to where the Ministry of Health of Ghana is fully behind it and provided all kinds of support for the next 10 years. The major medical companies, mostly in Europe, are behind us providing donated medical equipment as well as training. And now doctors from all around Africa, not just Ghana, are coming to our training center in Ghana for training, even some from Eastern Europe. And so it's really about raising that standard. And there's so many, that's how we found this kind of way of, wow, we can bring together governments, indigenous people, we can bring together corporations, and it just all comes together, and everyone's meeting their own interest. We're providing health care. The government's invested because their health care is improving. Companies are engaged because, one, they want to do something good, but they also want to break into those markets. And now I'll just give you an example of what's happening with us in Honduras. We got involved in Honduras back in 1989 after Hurricane Mitch, and just kept our engagement going with that country. And we developed partnerships with some of the local churches, Vida Abundante. We've got some interesting partnerships with the Ministry of Health, had some interesting partners with certain villages that we adopted over the years, 38 villages. And so we originally started putting in those concrete biosand filters, and then this partnership came on with the plastic filter, and we said, okay, well, how do we approach this differently? How do we look at Honduras as a country and get all the players involved that we need ultimately to be successful? And if you go on the ground there, I just returned back from Honduras, you go in all the households, and many of the concrete biosand filters still have the rotary stamp on them, and you talk to every single one of those families, and their health is dramatically improved. The children that used to drop out of school are now going to school. They used to, from the water as well as some of the other interventions, it's not only has it had major health impacts, but they've now reinvested the time that they've saved as well as the money that they've saved to do the things that they really want to do, which is get educated, to start a micro business, to do things that actually can improve their community beyond just getting them up to a certain standard of healthcare. And so we have all these anecdotal stories from all these households, but anecdotal stories don't get you a whole lot. So that's when we said, all right, we're going to put this plastic biosand filter, and we started a partnership. We talked I think it was Jim Bodenner that talked to Rob Quick about, well, if we really want to start getting some data and to figure out if this thing is going to work or not, how do we make it happen? He's like, the one guy you got to talk to is Dr. Mark Sopsey. And that's kind of how the relationship happened. And I know Rotary stepped in and funded that initial health impact study of the concrete biosand filters, and also have kind of, because of that great work, have fully enabled us to now do 3 more health impact studies on the plastic biosand filter. Because it's not only the anecdotal stories, we've got to get some hard data, because that's what the WHO and other governments are going to look at is, does it work, is it sustainable, and what will happen in the households? Will they do the other things that they need to do, which is the hand washing and the hygiene, the sanitation, and are there other things we can do to strengthen the filter? And that's why I look at, too, yes, international aid is focused on the hydrate filter, but it as a standalone, it's not a silver bullet, as you've heard Bob Hildreth say last night. It's going to take other interventions. It's going to take education. It's going to take partnerships. It's going to take a logistics chain. It's going to take partnerships with corporations, associations. And if you look at that in Honduras now, have the First Lady of Honduras that just provided $175,000 as part of a 61,000 filter effort. You've got Dow Corporation that is providing, donating the resin for our first 300,000 filters, which is an amazing gift. You've got the Coffee Growers Association, which is providing logistics in country. And you've got this network of NGOs now that are doing the implementation. We've got now alliances with ADRA, with CARE, with World Vision, because we found it's more powerful for us to partner than to own. And if we can enable those other organizations in doing the implementation, and we're just there helping to strengthen that network, then so much the better. And that to me is the future. And Rotary is playing a huge part in that because you're strengthening those implementers. You can take your local clubs and partnering with them. And what I heard last night was pretty amazing. You've got a Michigan club partnering with an Ohio club that is working on a project in the Dominican Republic. And there's all kinds of opportunities down the road for you to do creative things. As Dr. Sobsey talked about in his presentation, the thing that we have to worry about now is there are technologies out there that work. There's people on the ground that can implement these technologies. The thing that's lacking is the long-term sustainability question as well as the business plan. Something that we're doing to kind of test out the business model in Honduras is we said to ourselves, okay, we've been working in these rural villages, which is wonderful. We're really helping those villages, but what are we doing in downtown Tegucigalpa? And said, if we can do a 1,000-filter intervention in downtown Tegucigalpa, several things will happen. One, will improve the health care of those urban poor, but we'll also have a shining example to the middle class of Tegucigalpa, who are paying right now about $1.50 every 10 days for purified water because they have access to water, but the water that they have access to is not safe. And so we think that by providing filters to the urban poor, we can actually create a catalyst so that we can create a business model so that those in the middle class who can afford it will actually buy one of the filters. And we're talking to UNC and others about wanting to partner on how do we get the top business minds engaged in this? How do we get the top NGOs in the world that can help us implement? How do we get the WASRAG Foundation to get all the Rotary clubs together and figure out a way to do program funding versus project funding so that we can systematically get at some of these? How do we get the host nation people involved? How do we get the local communities involved? How do you get the churches involved? And that to me is the challenge that I give to all of you, which is what is your gift? What is your talent? What's your strength? What's your network? Find a way to make a difference. Simply, the great thing about coming to a conference like this is you don't have to put up the slides and say 1.1 billion people without safe water, all these people without hygiene and sanitation. You get it. You get the crisis. But there's a lot of people out there that don't get it. And so there's ways to provide project funding, but there's also simply ways to go out there and speak out about what's going on. And I'm really thankful that WHO and others are really starting to talk more about this and bringing together that alliance. But that's what I would encourage you to do today and while you're here at this conference, is there are things that you can do today to make a difference. There are technologies out there today that you can support. There are organizations out there today that you can make a difference, that are going to create catalytic events to ultimately strengthen the WHO network. And it's wonderful what they're doing up here at the high level. I just came from Washington, worked there 7.5 years, worked at the White House, worked at the State Department, worked at the Defense Department. I don't want the government necessarily, the government has a clear role, and that's how coordination works across ministries of health and works across, between, from nation state to nation state, which is wonderful, and we've got to strengthen that effort. And then on the ground, we've got all these people who know how to implement. What's missing is that kind of mid-level support and management and structure that can both strengthen the top and provide them data to know what technologies work and what systems work and to share some lessons learned, but then also to strengthen those on the ground who can actually make it happen. And that to me is what I think Rotary is very well placed to do, is to be able to work both sides of that the district clubs can work on those on the ground with some of those specific project interventions, and the WASRAG Foundation can really work on strengthening that whole global alliance. So I just want to, I'm standing between you and lunch, so I'm going to keep things short. But I just want to encourage you, thanks for coming today, and I'm happy that International Aid could be part of this, and I just encourage you to network with the people still around here to figure out what you can do today, because there's quite a bit, and we really can make a difference in this water crisis.